Okay, so in the practice vipassana meditation, so goal of the practice is to realize the complete liberation from dukkha, suffering. Okay? So in order to realize this goal, we need to develop wisdom, panya, okay? Especially vipassana panya, insight that leads to liberation. Okay? Now, but this panya, wisdom, it only arises with samadhi. Only when the mind is in the state of samadhi, panya arises. So it's a necessary condition for panya, samadhi. So panya, this wisdom, this clarity of mind that discerns nature as it is. Okay? So in order to discern clearly nature as it is, first you need to clear away all the distraction from the mind, all the hindrances from the mind. Those hindrances that prevents the mind, obstruct the mind from seeing clearly. Okay? And clearing away the hindrances, that is the job of samadhi. Okay? That's why you find in Samadhi Sutta in the Salayatana Samyutta. So the Buddha says, Samadhi bhikkhave bhaveta. Samahito bhikkhu yata buddham pajanati. Okay? So Buddha says, develop samadhi. Okay? He told the bhikkhus, the yogis, you must develop samadhi. Why? Because when the mind is in the state of samadhi, yata buddham pajanati, discern clearly, discern the nature of things clearly as they really are. Okay? And the Buddha went on to describe how mind in the state of samadhi, how it discerns nature of things as they really are. Okay? So he says, so mind in the state of samadhi discern clearly, as it really is. The eye is impermanent. Visible object is impermanent. Eye consciousness is impermanent. Eye contact is impermanent. Feeling born of eye contact is impermanent. So similarly, the ear is impermanent, sound is impermanent, ear consciousness impermanent, ear contact impermanent, feeling born of ear contact impermanent, and so on. All the six sense experience, all the dhammas that constitute the six sense experience, all of them impermanent. Mind in the state of samadhi can discern this clearly, the nature of impermanent as it really is. You can discern anicca, you also discern dukkha, also anatta. That means insight, vipassana insight, develop in the state of samadhi. Only in the state of samadhi. That's why Buddha says, samadhim bhaveta, develop samadhi. So mind in the state of samadhi is like, has been described as like a still forest pool. So pool, water is completely still. It appears like a mirror, can reflect clearly the forest above it. So similarly, the mind in the state of samadhi can reflect the nature of the object experience clearly, exactly as it is. That's why at the end of the Satipatthana instruction, the last part of the Satipatthana instruction, which we discussed last night, Vinaya Loke Abhijja Domanasa, removing desire and displeasure for the world. Actually, this last part, removing desire and displeasure, it implies samadhi, the state of samadhi, where the mind is freed from the hindrances. So we explained last night, removing desire and displeasure means removing the hindrances. Okay, so that is the state of samadhi, when the mind is freed from all hindrances. Okay, so even though in Buddha did not mention that samadhi at all, okay, but it's implied when he says removing desire and displeasure. Okay, so as we develop Satipatthana, okay, the samadhi is developed along. Okay, so which leads to sampajanya, this accurate clarity of mind, which is wisdom. Now, in order to develop samadhi, okay, so for vipassana yogis, okay, so you start with noting only limited object, okay, limited mostly to your primary object. Okay, so in the beginning, don't try to note too many objects. Okay, don't open up the mind, sixth sense experience, seeing, hearing, smelling, everything you want to note. Okay, you note only when necessary. So don't run frequently to note the secondary object unnecessarily. Okay? Only when if the secondary object is prominent, it pulls your attention, it distracts your attention away from the primary object. Then only you know. Okay? If it's not prominent, if it does not distract your mind, pull your attention away from the primary object, then you ignore it. Stay with the primary object. So stay with the primary object most of the time. Okay? Because in the beginning, if you take too many objects unnecessarily, because mindfulness concentration not well developed yet, the mind, the noting mind cannot handle so many objects to note. You will be dispersed everywhere, become restless. Okay? And the primary object also should be gross, easy, for the noting mind to follow continuously. Okay, so you must be able to hold the attention of the noting mind easily. Okay, so otherwise the noting mind will wander away again and again. Okay, because you try to take subtle objects from the very beginning. You take citta, so subtle. You cannot hold the attention of the noting mind when it's still weak. Okay? So the mind will wander again and again. Okay? So objects also must be simple, easy for the mind to follow and sink into the object. Okay. So start with very simple, gross object. In the sitting meditation, so you note rising, falling. Rising, falling, very simple. Okay, only two, rising and falling. Okay, so it's also gross. So easy for the mind to follow. Okay, So rising, falling not clear, then you're not sitting, touching. Okay? So in the walking meditation, the steps. Okay? Lifting, pushing, placing. Okay? These are all very simple objects, gross objects. Okay? Simple for the mind to pick up, to follow. Gross enough to hold the attention of the noting mind continuously. So you start with these objects, okay? And then you make effort. Apply the basic method of noting. Note them continuously. Okay? Now, so as you are making effort to try to note them continuously, in the beginning, the hindrances, they are bound to arise. Okay? So, I have not met a single yogi yet, whereby first time meditate, no hindrance. Okay? So hindrances are bound to arise. Restless, wandering, sleepiness, laziness, aversion, resistance to making effort, boredom, agitation, desire, so on and so forth. Okay? So all kinds of hindrances are bound to arise. Okay? Every time it arises, it hinders the mind. It's a hindrance. So it hinders the development of the mind, the development of your meditation. Okay? It ruins your practice. Okay? So as long as you allow it to remain, your mind will be hindered. Meditation will be ruined. Okay? So you allow it to remain for 1 minute. For 1 minute, your practice will be hindered, will be disrupted. Okay? Allow it to stay for 2 minutes. 2 minutes, your practice will be disrupted, and so on. So in order for your practice not to be disrupted or ruined, okay, you must train your mind, okay, to note these hindrances as soon as each one arises. Okay? Note them immediately. Okay? Of course, to do this first, you must learn to recognize the hindrances as and when they arise. Okay? So you learn their nature. Sensual desire is like very, very sticky. Cannot let go. Delighting. You have to learn to recognize this nature. Ill will, aversion is like very violent. Hits out at the object, reject the object. You feel the mind uncomfortable. Okay? So sensual desire, the mind feel, oh, very nice, very wonderful. And dosa arise, the mind is uncomfortable. Okay? So don't like the object. That includes also worry, anxiety. When the mind is uncomfortable, that's dosa. Okay? So sloth and torpor, mostly sleepiness. But you must also know laziness. When the mind refuses to work. So resisting effort. Always finding excuses not to meditate. Then I go and I listen a bit only, after that I come back. So I see a bit walking meditation somewhere there, attracting, so the sensual desire arise. Then the mind already lazy, don't do work. So see a bit, never mind, look, they can come back. I'm making excuse already. Must recognize all these hindrances. boredom also. Restlessness very easy. The mind is very chaotic. Can unsettle. Okay. Yeah, but sometimes yogis refuse or choose to ignore. The mind already so noisy, still try not rising, falling, rising, falling. Okay? It's a noise. It's like playing a radio with a lot of noise. You didn't tune in exactly into the channel. There's a lot of buzzing. So the music will not be clear. Right? So must not ignore. Okay? So we must learn to recognize the hindrances. Okay? Every yogi must learn this. Okay? It's part of the skill of meditation. To learn to recognize the hindrances. Okay? Learn to recognize mindfulness also. Both the wholesome and unwholesome. Okay? State of mind. Must learn to recognize. Okay? Then only your practice can develop. You can direct your mind away from the unwholesome and towards the wholesome. Okay? So the hindrances, you must train the mind. Soon as it arises, not immediately. Okay? Not firmly. Dispel the hindrances through noting. Okay? Dispel through noting, not through by forcefully pushing them away, suppressing them forcefully. Okay? By noting. Okay? So the mind is restless, chaotic. You not the chaos, not the restlessness. By noting firmly, it disappears. The mind calm down. Okay. You don't note by saying calm down, calm down, calm down. Okay. You note it. Okay, with mindfulness. Okay, by noting wholeheartedly. Okay, all the energy mind goes to the mindfulness. Then you deprive the restless state of energy. Okay, then by itself it will disappear because no more energy invested in it. Okay, so in this way you dispel through noting. Okay, not by asking the mind, now you calm down, calm down. Okay. This is the power of the noting mind when it's well developed. Whatever it note, it dissolve. Okay. Noting mind, well developed like a needle. Poke the balloon, poke, explode. Every time, whatever you know, poke, dissolve, disappear. So with repeated noting and dispelling the hindrances each time they arise, okay, you're weakening the hindrances. Okay, every time you dispel it through noting, you weaken the hindrances. Okay, at the same time, the mindfulness and the samadhi becomes stronger. Because you're exercising the mindfulness to note, so it becomes stronger. Okay, mindfulness stronger, the samadhi also comes together, becomes stronger. Okay, so the jhana factors become stronger. The vitaka, vichara, all that becomes stronger. Okay. So as the hindrances becomes weaker and weaker, and as the sati, samadhi gradually develop, become stronger and stronger, then you find that the mind is becoming less and less distracted by the hindrances. Okay, because it's becoming weaker and weaker. Okay, as you keep on developing, eventually there come a time when, for a period of time, all the distraction from the hindrances will cease completely. So during that time, only pure noting mind occurs continuously. So it occurring continuously, moment to moment to moment, just pure noting, without any hindrances. It occur with strength. Okay. So when it becomes stronger and stronger, you find that with each pure noting that occurs, the noting mind as if it falls closely on the object. It's as if it's like being thrown or plunged into the object. Okay? Every time you note, the noting mind goes into the object, goes into it. Okay? So when this happens, when this continuous pure noting, every moment keep going into the object, go in. And you can say the Kanika Samadhi has been established. This moment to moment Samadhi is established. And as the momentary concentration strengthens, you find that the noting mind becoming exclusively pure. Become very, very pure. Yes. As pure noting is occurring one after another. So each pure noting mind is preceded and succeeded by another pure noting mind continuously. So there's just this continuous process of pure noting consciousness that flows on moment to moment to moment, noting one object after another after another. So there's no break, no gap in the continuous flow of this moment to moment noting. So no impure thoughts comes in between this pure moment of noting. So there's just a flow of pure wholesome noting going on and on and on. So this is called Chitta Visuddhi, purity of mind. So one of the 7 stages of purification of mind that leads to freedom from dukkha. First is Sila Visuddhi. You establish yourself in purity of your Sila. Then after that you meditate. Then you arrive at this Chitta Visuddhi, in the state of Samadhi. The mind is pure, completely free from the hindrances. So this is a necessary step of purification before the insights can develop. So the other 5 stages of purity pertains to in development of insight. So in this state of Chitta Visuddhi, purity of mind, the mind is totally pure, exclusively pure. You can feel, sometimes the yogi feels the purity of mind, because it's a great contrast to previously, before the mind reached this state of Chitta Visuddhi. So because previously, if the mind is not totally pure, Yeah, even though you make effort to note continuously, you may think it's pure. Sometimes you ask yogi, do you note continuously? Yes, yes, yes. So actually a lot of impure thoughts arise, just that I'm not mindful enough to notice. That's why I ignore a lot of the hindrances, because the mind is not mindful enough to notice. So you may think the mind is pure, but all sorts of thoughts, desire, aversion, even doubt may arise and intervene in between. So at that time, pure noting mind is mixed with impure consciousness. That's why at that time you may feel that noting is going on continuously, but at the back of the mind you feel there's some undercurrent of mental unsettledness. So, but once the strength of the Kanika Samadhi develop, so noting occurs efficiently with momentum. There's no pure, impure thoughts that can intrude, because the momentum of the pure noting goes on and on and on. So only pure noting mind occurs, fixing on one object after another, moment to moment to moment. The mind is completely unpolluted by the defilements. So at that time you can feel the mind is so pure, it's totally peaceful, there's no unsettledness at all. But for vipassana yogis, this type of samadhi, unlike the samatha jhana, it does not last very long initially. So in the beginning, it may last for a few minutes only. Because you not well developed yet, the momentum cannot go very far. So it may last for a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on how far you develop it. So, but later on, as you develop more and more, it can last longer and longer. It can even last for hours sometimes, especially in higher development of insight, like especially Sankarupe Kanyana, where the mind is very stable. The samadhi, the vipassana samadhi can last very long. So, however long it is, it's not strong enough to last a whole day or whole night like in samatha meditation. But regardless of how long or how short it is, during that period of time, when the mind is in this state of purity, so the mind is pure, clean, pure, clear. So, and the yogi can actually feel the purity of mind. Feels like the mind has been completely detoxed. Detox all the toxin of the defilements. So the mind is like fresh laundry, straight out of the washing machine. So this state of citta visuddhi is a powerful state of wholesome mind. So, and as a result of its purity, So when your mind is so pure, then the purity of your sila will also be further strengthened. Okay, your sila will be further purified and strengthened. Okay, before you begin meditation, you already purify your sila, your physical, verbal action. Okay, but earlier on, before you start meditating, before you arrive at this stage of Chitta Visuddhi, you need a lot of effort to observe sila. You need a lot of effort to restrain all your external physical, verbal action, to prevent yourself from killing, stealing, and especially telling lies. So most people know this is the most difficult precepts. Sometimes people tell lies habitually and they don't even notice it. When you decide to, because a habit is so strong, when you decide to observe sila, after you learn the Dhamma, it's, I must observe sila. Otherwise, do a lot of unwholesome karma. Okay? But initially, you find it's a lot of struggle. Okay? You have to put in a lot of effort, not to kill, not to steal, not to tell lies, and so on. Okay? Especially in the old days. Old days, you know, you want to eat chicken, you go to the market, they give you live chicken. Nowadays easy, you go supermarket, there's ready, it's already there. So in the old days, a lot of people in the habit of killing. Maybe nowadays still, because pests in your house, the ants come in and all that. Sometimes the urge, I must. But then in the heart, I observe precepts, cannot. But then still, it's a struggle in the mind. So why? Because internally the mind is not pure. So the defilements keep arising within, prodding the mind to do unwholesome action. Kill, never mind, kill. I often see even in Buddhist center, people kill. Okay? They say, no killing, but then when the ants come, all the precepts forgotten. Cockroach come, all the precepts forgotten. Okay? So because defilements still arise within, the mind is not pure. So you are struggling with the defilements. Okay, so you need to exert a lot of effort with mindfulness to restrain it. Restrain these defilements. Okay, restrain the mind not to act on these defilements. But often, because before you meditate, the strength of your mindfulness is weak, is not sufficiently developed. Okay, and without mindfulness, you cannot develop a mindfulness to become strong. Okay, so sometimes people say no need meditation, you can be mindful in daily life. You go and be mindful in daily life. You see all the defilements keep coming, and you say I'm mindful, but still the defilements coming. How strong is that mindfulness? Without meditation, what is mindfulness? Even metta and all that, good wholesome mental state, cannot be strong. Okay. So often because the mindfulness is still not strong yet, despite your effort, you are unable to restrain the mind. So you give in, and then the precepts broken. Okay? So, but once through meditation, you come to this state of chitta visuddhi. The mind is pure. Mindfulness is well developed. So the mind is kept in a state of continuous purity. So it's continuously pure. So the mind possesses the strength of purity. This purity of mind is a strength of mind. Okay, it can resist unwholesomeness. Okay, so you can feel before this, your mind easily give in to the defilements. But once you have developed this strength of purity, the mind is very steady. It's not shaken by the defilements. It can resist the defilements. Okay? That's how the Bodhisattva sat under the Bodhi tree can resist Mara. Right? Can resist the daughters of Mara. Why? Because the mind is pure. Right? So in that state, the whole mind is strongly inclined towards purity, away from impurity. Okay? So therefore, because of this, because internally the purity is so strong, it reflects outward in your physical and verbal action. That purity can reflect in your physical and verbal action. So your physical and verbal action also becomes pure automatically. Because you find you can keep your sila easily, because internally there's no struggle with the defilements. So the mind is inclined towards wholesomeness, towards purity. It automatically it chooses wholesomeness over unwholesomeness. So you choose to have more peacefulness, more clarity, over restlessness and downness of mind. So it's like a person, after you have showered, you clean yourself, then you put on a fresh pair of clothing, very clean. Then when you go outside and walk, you see there's something dirty there. You avoid it. You don't want to go near, right? Because you want to keep yourself pure, clean. Okay, so you no longer want to go there. Okay, before that, when you are wearing dirty clothing, no problem. So, and due to this purity of mind, the mind becomes refined. So, and this refinement of the mind also reflect back in your physical and verbal action. So your speech and actions become refined, gentle, cultured, well restrained. So you can carry yourself with calmness, with composure, steadiness, with restraint. So you can see this in a yogi's external behavior. When a yogi has arrived at the state of purity of mind, you can see his external behavior as a change. He goes about his daily activities well restrained. There's no excitement in his physical and verbal action. Okay? So physically, he goes about his activities calmly. He do not hurry, rush here, rush there, kanchong. So there's no display of excitement in his physical action. So his eyes does not look here, look there, look see. So all his action well restrained, graceful, elegant. So and verbally also, his speech. When he speaks, there's no excitement in his speech. He speaks calmly. He speaks clearly. So there's clarity in his speech. Which shows the clarity of mind within. When your mind is clear within, when you speak also, you speak clearly. You speak coherently. So you don't jump about here and there. Right? Sometimes talking about rising, falling, suddenly jump to daily activities. And from there, jump 10 years ago, my retreat. So incoherent. Okay. So you speak coherently with clear sequence. Systematically, you present everything clearly. So yogi like this come for interview. Our job is easier. We don't have to struggle. What is this person talking about? I have to ask him question to clarify. So in the state of Chitta Visuddhi, only pure noting mind occurs continuously. There's no impure mind intervening in between. So in such a mental state, there's no thoughts arising. So just noting, pure noting go on. No thoughts can arise. So the yogi don't even have a thought, I am noting very well. My noting is so continuous, is so clear. No such thoughts arise. The mind is simply noting, experiencing the bare nature of the object in each moment, continuously. There's not even a thought about the nature of object noted. This is hardness, this is pressure, this is knowing, this is noting, and so on. No such thought arise. Yet the mind is noting, it's experiencing clearly the bare nature, each moment of experience, hardness, softness, stiffness, and so on. So that's just a bare experience. Just a continuous, clear, bare experience of bare qualities, bare nature, moment to moment. So because noting is going on continuously without any thoughts in between about what is noted, or even the thought I am noting, so it's like the yogi's mind is like it's lost in noting, completely lost in the work of noting. Don't even have the idea that he's noting. And noting just goes on and on and on its own. Okay? So yogis don't even know that he's noting. It's like when you're lost in a daydream. Do you know that you are lost in a daydream? You won't know until you snap out of it. Then only you know. So similarly, the yogi, when nothing is going on like this, so he do not know, he has no idea that he is noting continuously. It's only after his mind withdraw or come out from such a state, and he look back, then only he realize, he knows nothing was going on just now. Okay. So in that state, just pure noting goes on and on. Okay, there's no thought at all. No thought. I'm noting so well. I'm noting so clearly. Okay, so the yogi do not know. Only after coming out, withdrawing from it, then he knows. The mind was completely in the work of noting. Okay? So nothing was going on clearly, continuously. Okay, and he knows the nature that's noted. Okay, so when he recollect, he knows what was noted. He can report during the interview what was noted clearly. Okay? Okay, now let's talk a bit about this Kanika Samadhi, this momentary concentration, or moment to moment concentration. So what is it? So it's defined in the Mahatika, commentary to the Visuddhimagga. It defines Kanika Samadhi as Kana Matta Titiko Samadhi, which means a samadhi that lasts for a mere moment. Samadhi that lasts for only a mere moment or one moment. Okay. So that is the definition of a momentary concentration. The concentration, the samadhi that lasts for only a mere moment. Now, it's defined in this way, okay, due to the nature of the object that this samadhi arises with. Okay. So what is the object of this samadhi? It's the sankharas, formation, the mental physical nature, conditioned mental physical nature that arises within your experience. Okay? So this samadhi takes this mental physical nature as its object. It arises depending on this object. Okay? So samadhi is a state of mind. So state of mind always arises with object. Okay? Because the mind experiences object. Okay? Without object, the mind cannot arise. Okay? So as yogi, you know this very clear. When there's no object, there's no noting. Only when the object arises, there's noting. There's knowing. So samadhi also, it arises depending on an object. Okay? And this object is this mental physical nature. Okay? So when this object arises, this samadhi arise. Okay? So when this object disappear, this samadhi that depends on it also disappear. Okay? So but how long does this mental physical nature last? Yeah, you see, this sound is a physical nature. How long does it last? Just a moment, right? Then it's gone. So you focus your mind. At that time, the mind there, that's kanika samadhi. So it lasts for only a moment, because the object that it depends on also lasts for only a moment. Okay. So that's why it's defined as the samadhi that lasts for only a moment, a mere moment. Okay? Now, but some may think that if it lasts for only a moment, then how can we develop insight, vipassana, based on this samadhi that lasts for only a moment? How can it be strong enough to develop insight? So this is explained also in the Mahatika. So after I define the momentary concentration, kana mata titiko samadhi, the samadhi that lasts for a mere moment, then it continues. Sopihi aramani nirantaram ekakarena pavatamano patipakena anabibhuto abhito viya chittam nichalam tapeti. So it says that refers back to the momentary concentration. So that momentary concentration. So for that momentary concentration too, when it occurs uninterruptedly. So uninterruptedly means without any gaps in between. It's not interrupted at all. It occurs moment to moment to moment, without being interrupted. So nirantaram, antara, you know antara, in between. So nirantara means no in between, nothing in between. So it goes on continuously, nothing in between. So uninterruptedly means that. So when this momentary concentration it occurs uninterruptedly, moment to moment to moment, continuously. So aramani, with his object, with his respective object. So the translator here translate with his respective object. You translate literally, you just say occurs on his object. Okay, but the translator here, because he understand the nature of kanika samadhi, so it says with its respective object, because every moment samadhi it takes a different object. So you note rising, rising, rising. Every moment you note is a different rising, different rising. So it's respective object. And then ekakarena, in a single mode. So single mode here, Mahasi Sayadaw explained, single mode means this momentary concentration does not fluctuate in its strength, in its intensity. One moment very, very strong, next moment become weak, and so on. Okay, so in a single mode means it's consistent. Okay, it occurs with consistent strength, intensity. Okay, that means it's stable. Okay, it does not fluctuate. That's ekakarena, in a single mode. And then patipakena anabhiputo, and is not overcome by opposition. Opposition here means hindrances. Okay? So this momentary concentration is occurring uninterruptedly, continuously, in a single mode, without opposition from the hindrances. Okay, so when this happens, when it's occurring like this, what happened? So it says, apitoviya chittam nichalam tapeti. Okay, so when this happens, this momentary concentration, able to fix the mind immovably, as if in absorption. Okay? So occurring moment to moment to moment with consistent strength, without any hindrances. So it fixes the mind on the object. Okay? Immovably. It cannot be shaken. Nichala means it does not shake. Chala means shake. Like bhumi chala. Bhumi, you know, the earth. Bhumi chala means earthquake. So here it says, chittam nichalam. The mind does not shake. It fixes the mind. The mind does not shake. Okay, that's the strength of momentary concentration when it's occurring like this. Okay, it fixes the mind immovably. Okay, on each object, moment to moment. So it says apitovia, as if it's in absorption, as if the mind is in absorption. Okay? So every moment, not as if the mind is absorbed into the object. Okay? So, but remember, this is just momentary absorption. Okay, it's not like samatha, it's just absorbed completely. It's momentary because the object is momentary. Okay? So when the momentary concentration is occurring like this, okay? If a single moment, it may be weak, but when it's occurring like this again and again, moment to moment, with strength, so it's like you weave one piece of thread is weak, you pull it, it breaks, right? But if you weave many pieces of thread together into a piece of cloth, it's more difficult to tear that piece of cloth. It has that strength. So when momentary concentration is occurring continuously in the way described in this commentary, it has that power to penetrate into the profound nature of the object. Okay? Because each moment is like absorb. Go in, go in, go in. Okay? So this absorption, of course, is different from the absorption in samatha. So what's the difference? Samatha, the absorption is like you take the needle and then you just poke it onto the pin cushion. Then the needle just stay there. That is samatha, absorption. It just stay there. The object does not change. The pin cushions are the object. Okay? The pin is the needle is like the absorption. So just stay there. Okay? The absorption in vipassana it's like what we said the other day. The needle of the sewing machine. It doesn't stay. Go in, then come out. Go in and come out. Go in, come out. Again and again, but fast. Okay? As the object, the piece of cloth go through very fast. It also go that. So the stream of object in your noting, the stream of object, okay, occurring one after another. Every moment, the noting goes absorb into absorb. So this is the state, citta visuddhi. Okay, when it's occurring continuously like this, it's citta visuddhi. The mind is pure, nothing. Kanika samadhi occurring continuously. So in the state of citta visuddhi, mind has this clarity, okay? Stability, clarity, insight arise within the state of citta visuddhi. Okay? That's why you need to develop citta visuddhi first, before insight can arise. Now, due to the nature of kanika samadhi, its nature of arising, passing away together with the mental physical nature, moment to moment. Okay? Due to this nature, insight or vipassana, insight into impermanent suffering non-self can only arise with momentary concentration. Okay? And that's why in the Mahatika, we quoted last time, nahi kanika samadhi vina vipassana sambhavati. Okay? Vipassana cannot be produced in the absence or without kanika samadhi. Okay? Because only with kanika samadhi you can develop insight into impermanent suffering non-self. Because this samadhi, it rises and passes away together with the object, the mental physical nature. It allows the noting mind to keep track of the moment to moment arising, disappearing of the mental physical nature. Okay? So it allows the mind to follow the momentary rise and fall of these formations, which is necessary for development of insight. Okay? To develop insight into impermanent suffering non-self, the noting mind must be able to discern clearly the moment to moment arising, disappearing of mental physical nature. Okay? And only kanika samadhi allows the mind to observe this clearly. Okay? So, not the samatha jhana. Samatha jhana, your mind is completely absorbed into the object. Okay? And you cannot observe the rise and fall of the object. Okay? Because when the mind is completely unified with the object, there's no differentiation in the experience. Okay? The mind becomes the object becomes the mind. Okay? Like you absorb in white casino, your mind is become the whiteness is the mind. Okay? So your experience is only whiteness. When the mind is completely absorbed, it's just whiteness. There's not even the idea the front is white, back is white, left, right is white, up, down is white. It's just whiteness. Okay? There's no whiteness before or whiteness after. Just whiteness. That's all. Okay? It's undifferentiated experience. Okay? Experience is undifferentiated. You cannot see any arising, any disappearing at all. Okay? And also, in the very first place, most of the samatha objects are concepts, not reality. So, and even when the object is reality, like there's the 4-element meditation, but when you practice the 4-element as a samatha practice, they stop at seeing the nature of the elements only. They do not go further to see the change in the elements, the arising, disappearing. They don't go further than that. Okay, so because of that, they cannot see the arising, disappearing. Okay. So because it does not discern arising, disappearing, so you cannot develop vipassana. Okay, you cannot discern impermanent, suffering, non-self. Okay, so the state of jhana, mind is completely absorbed, unified with the object. It's not suitable for development of insight. Okay? Only momentary concentration allows the yogi to develop insight. That's why even for samatha yogis, when they want to switch to develop vipassana, they have to withdraw from the state of jhana, and then they note the mental physical nature. When they are noting mental physical nature, the samadhi that is present is kanika samadhi, not the samatha jhana, because they have already withdrawn from that state of jhana. Okay, and now we have to look at kanika samadhi in the suttas, because there is a criticism that says that kanika samadhi is not taught by the Buddha. It's not mentioned at all in the suttas. Therefore, I say is not in accordance with the Buddha's teaching. So, what do you say to that? Actually, it's true, You cannot find this word kanika samadhi in the suttas at all. It's not literally mentioned. Okay? So, but just because it's not literally mentioned, does not mean that it's not there. Okay? If you know what is kanika samadhi, when you read the suttas, you know the Buddha is implying kanika samadhi in some of the passages. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so but this word kanika samadhi, you cannot find it literally mentioned in the suttas. Kanika samadhi, this term is found only in the commentaries. Okay, it's a term that's coined by the ancient commentarial teachers. Okay, they coined this word in order to use it to refer to the samadhi that is present when the yogi is experiencing or noting clearly the moment to moment arising, disappearing of nama rupa. Okay, so in the suttas, Buddha regularly talk about noting on the nature of rise and fall of the nama rupa. This one you cannot deny. It's in the suttas. Okay, in the Satipatthana Sutta also. So like Kayanupassana, right? Buddha says, samudaya dhammanupasiva kayasmi viharati, vayasmin dhammanupasi, vaya dhammanupasiva kayasmi viharati, and samudaya vaya dhammanupasiva kayasmi viharati. Okay? So the yogi dwells, noting continuously the nature of arising in the body, or the nature of disappearing in the body, or both nature of arising and disappearing in the body. Okay? But here the Buddha did not mention Kanika Samadhi or any Samadhi at all. Right? So, but does it mean that there's no Samadhi present? So, if you are experienced yogi, you have noted before this moment to moment arising very fast, arising, disappearing of the mental physical nature, like what happened in Udayabaya Jnana, or Bhanga Jnana, and so on. Okay, you know that in order to discern this moment to moment arising, disappearing of this mental physical nature, it requires a very good degree of samadhi. Okay? Without samadhi, the mind has no refinement, no clarity at all to discern this very fine moment to moment arising, disappearing of the mental physical nature. Okay? So even though samadhi is not mentioned at all by the Buddha here, it is implied. Okay? Its presence is implied. Okay? As we said the other day, that the Buddha do not mention everything in the sutta. Many things are implied. Okay? He only mentioned what is necessary for the audience that are listening, for them to guide them on the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, to realize the Dhamma. Okay, so it's a very direct communication of the Dhamma. Okay, so such communication, you don't have to mention everything. Okay, because most of the people who met the Buddha in those times, they have this panya parami. Their wisdom is sharp. They can grasp what the Buddha says. Okay, the Buddha don't have to mention everything. Okay, so but later on, as time passes, so most people, many people, read the sutta, you may not understand what the Buddha means if it is not spelled out clearly. Okay, so which is why there are the commentaries. That's why the ancient teachers they explain the suttas, and all this explanation has been compiled, form the body of text called the commentaries. Okay, actually this commentaries was compiled since the Buddha's time. In the Buddha's time, there are people like Venerable Mahakachayana. He is said to be the foremost among the Buddha's disciples who is able to elaborate on in detail, what the Buddha spoke in brief. That basically means he's a commentator. Okay. You have Venerable Sariputta is able to expand on the themes of the Buddha's teaching, expand on the Four Noble Truths. You have the Samadhiti Sutta, and so on. So it's actually from the Buddha's time that this commentary tradition has begun. Okay, so later on, very it was all compiled together by the Venerable Buddhaghosa. So anyway, that's why commentaries are important. So samadhi, when the Buddha talk about noting of arising and disappearing, samadhi is implied. Without samadhi, you cannot discern clearly nature arising, disappearing. The question is, what samadhi? So as we mentioned just now, there's only one samadhi that allows you to discern arising, disappearing clearly. That's Kanika Samadhi. Okay. So let's give you another sutta in case you are not satisfied. There's also the Samadhi Bhavana Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, the book of the fourth, Chatuka Nipata Pali. So in this sutta, Buddha talk about 4 different types of development of samadhi. So Samadhi Bhavana means development of samadhi. So here I'll just quote from one of the development of samadhi that is relevant to our discussion here. So is okay. Buddha asks, Katamacha bhikkhave samadhi bhavana bhavita bahulikata asavanam kayaya samvattati. So Buddha asks, what bhikkhus is the development of samadhi, which when cultivated and developed, it leads to the destruction of the asavas. You know what's the asavas? Defilements. You should know what are the asavas. Every time you chant, idam me punyam asava kaya waham. So asavas are the defilements that said to flow from the mind of being. They are impurities of mind compared to like when you have a wound, you don't dress it properly, you don't clean it properly. After a while, it fester, right? And fester, the impurities flow out from the pus, flows out from it. That is called asava, impurity that flows out. Okay, so the asavas are said to flow out, the impurities that flow out from the minds of beings in samsara, from the lowest plane of existence until the highest plane. That means from avicii, hell, until the arupa brahma world. These asavas keep flowing out from the mind of beings. Okay, so that means this is the defilements that keeps us bound to samsara, trapped in samsara. Okay, and there are 4 asavas. There's kama sava. Kama means sensual desire. Okay? So the asavas are sensual desire, or the taints. Usually they translate asavas as taints, impurity. Okay? So kama sava means a taint of sensual desire. Okay? Then there's bhava sava, a taint of existence, which means attachment to existence. Okay? Then Ditthasava, attain of wrong views. Okay? And then Avijjasava, attain of ignorance. Okay? So the Buddha says there's this concentration, this samadhi, which when developed, it can lead to the destruction of these 4 asavas. Okay? Now, so how are these 4 asavas destroyed? Okay? So they are actually destroyed through magga, through the path, the 4 stages of the path. So Sotapatti Magga, the first path, completely destroy, eradicate wrong views. Okay? Completely destroy. After that, no more wrong views remain. Okay? But the other 3 remain. Okay? Then the second path, Sakadagami Magga, does not destroy any of them, but it weakens them. Okay? Then the third path, Anagami Magga, path of non-returner, will destroy completely Kamasava, attain of sensual desire. Okay? So Anagami no longer have sensual desire. Okay? But the other 2 remain. Attachment to existence and ignorance. So these 2 can only be completely destroyed through the 4th path, Arahata Magga. Okay? So when it says, Buddha says, the development of samadhi that leads to the destruction of the asavas. Okay? So what he actually means is the development of samadhi that lead to the attainment of these various stages of magga that can destroy the asavas. Okay? So what is this development of concentration, development of samadhi that leads to the destruction of asavas, that lead to the attainment of these various magga that destroy the asavas? So the Buddha explained, Ida bhikkhave bhikkhu panchasu upadana khandesu udayabhaya nupassi viharati. Okay? So it says here, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu dwells continuously noting udayabhaya anupassi, continuously noting rise and fall, arising and disappearing of 5 aggregates subject to clinging. Okay? So by noting continuous arising, disappearing of 5 aggregates, you develop this samadhi, that leads to the attainment of various stages of magga that destroy the asavas. Okay? So what is this samadhi that's developed when you note the arising, disappearing of the 5 aggregates? Again, it's only one, Kanika samadhi. There's no other samadhi allows you to note the arising, disappearing of the 5 aggregates like this. Okay? So even though it's not mentioned Kanika Samadhi here, if you know what is Kanika Samadhi, you know what the Buddha is talking about here, is Kanika Samadhi, this moment to moment Samadhi. Now, then another question arises. Is this Samma Samadhi? Is it right concentration? So because there is also a criticism that we don't have Samma Samadhi. Because you see, in some suttas the Buddha describes Samma Samadhi as the 4 jhanas. Okay? So But here, this samadhi leads to attainment of the magga, all the way arahata magga. What do you think? Is it samma samadhi? Right concentration? Must be right concentration. Otherwise it cannot lead to attainment of magga. Okay? So then why some ask, how come Buddha defined samma samadhi as the 4 jhanas? That's because that when the Buddha defined it as 4 jhanas, he's referring to the factors of the Ariya Magga, okay, the noble path that arise at the culmination of the practice. When Magga, the real Magga, Ariya Magga, that turns the mind to the experience of Nibbana. Okay, at that time, the Magga arises only a moment. In that moment, all the 8 factors of the noble path arise. Okay, so the Buddha in the sutta were defining the factors of the noble path. Okay, so in that moment, the Magga Citta, it takes Nibbana as an object. Okay, and that time the Magga Citta is a Jhana Citta. Okay, so if you have studied Abhidhamma before, you know the Magga Citta, Phala Citta, they can occur as first jhana or second jhana or third jhana, fourth jhana, fifth jhana citta. Right? That's why from 89 citta you get 121 cittas, because you expand Magga Citta, Magga Phala Citta according to the jhana level. Okay, so at the moment of experience of Magga and Phala, the mind is absorbed in Nibbana. So that's why it's a Jhana Citta. Okay, so when Buddha defined Samma Samadhi as the Samatha Jhana, the 4 jhanas, it's talking about the Ariya Magga, not Vipassana Magga, not Pubbabhaga Magga, the preliminary path. Okay, preliminary path is where the preliminary work that you need to do, development of insight. Okay, you have to do this preliminary work of development of insight before the Ariya Magga can arise. Only when insight is fully developed, completely mature, then only Ariya Magga can arise. Okay, so Vipassana meditation, development of insight is called Pubbabhaga Magga, the preliminary path. Okay, during the preliminary path, Kanika Samadhi is Samma Samadhi. Okay, it's the right concentration, because only that concentration allows you to discern arising, disappearing of Nama Rupa. Okay, only by discerning arising, disappearing can you develop insight into impermanent suffering non-self, and develop Vipassana insight. Okay, so during development of insight, Samma Samadhi is Kanika Samadhi. Okay, when Ariya Magga, the noble path, arise, then Samma Samadhi is the 4 jhanas. Okay. Okay, we stop here.